Hey, my name is Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Ross Killeen from Love Yourself Today, the director of Love Yourself Today, the documentary with Damien Dempsey. Ross, you're very welcome to a very wet and cold Sydney. I believe the sun is shining in Dublin.
It is today, yeah, and yesterday. But we have a heat wave. It's normally around 2 days long, so let's hope it lasts a bit longer than that.
Yes. Um, Uh, Look, I've got to admit I'm a big fan of Damien's, and so I was really delighted when I, saw the film was in the offing. Um, the format of the film, I thought was a little unusual. Certainly, I wanted to hear about Damo and the backstory, but the way that you use the three characters from the concert, I thought it worked really well. But I was interested to know how you came up with that idea. How did the ideas develop for the documentary?
Well, it all came about from being at one of Damo's gigs. Really, I went along to a gig with my wife, and she was pregnant at the time, and we kind of sat in Vicar Street, and we were up high, looking down on the crowd, and it was actually one of my first ever. I've always listened to Damo and knew his music and all that stuff, but I hadn't experienced the Vicar Street, the Church of Damo as they call it, before. And at the time, my mother was very sick and just going through a bit of a rough patch, and Damo's music was really singing to me. I was really, finding, I don't know, solace in listening to his music and strength from listening to his music. Not on Your Own Tonight and Chris and Stevie, Apple of My Eye, although those kind of tunes were making me feel good. And someone told me, you have to go to the gig. It's a very cathartic experience, and you'll feel a lot better after it. So I went along with my wife, and we sat there and just started watching the crowd, and watching Damo, and watching the crowd, and watching Damo, and just noticing, geez, everyone's in floods of tears here. Everyone's arm in arm, singing every word back to him. Damo was on stage, just being the conduit for it all. You really felt he'd kind of what am I trying to say? He'd kind of lived everything he was singing about. You believed it. And then people are crying, people are arm in arm, and then everyone's happy at the end, singing "Love Yourself Today." And then when the lights went off, everyone's still singing "Love Yourself Today," and they were walking down the road singing it for about 20 minutes after. And I just was like, I'd never been to a gig like that before. It was a really amazing, a massive music fan, been to so many gigs down the years, but I'd never been to something like that. And it just felt very spiritual. It felt like a really cathartic energy in the room. And I 100% felt better walking out of there. I left a lot in that room, got a good cry in, and just felt great after it as a result. And it just kind of looking at all the crowd and wondering what kind of stories people had, what things had people what things had people been through that made Damien's music resonate so deeply with them, because everyone has a story, and I think everyone was there for a reason, to remember that person who was gone, or to reflect on the hard times they've been through, or to find some strength in going through a hard time that they're going through at that moment. um and it was amazing, yeah. And like the crowd was kind of all walks of life, all different age groups, different generations, and I just found that fascinating, that here's an artist that can speak to so many different people in such a true and authentic way. So as most things happen in Dublin, I met a mate of mine in the pub a few days later, and I was talking to him about, geez, I went to this gig and it was amazing. And he said, oh, I was at the gig last year, and we just got talking, and we were like, wouldn't it be great to do a doc that's kind of half capturing the concert, but then the other half is following the people and trying to dig into what they've been through and dig into what, you know, makes them go to the gig every year, and why Damo's music is so important. So yeah, you know, as like I said, most things happen in Ireland. It was pub talk for a while, you know, but then eventually it was like, no, let's do this. You know, this is a really good idea for a film. So I wrote it all out, and you know, the concept of what it would be, through a mutual friend, managed to bring it to Damien himself, and met him in a cafe in Donamead one day, and pitched the idea to him, I suppose, you know. So talked him through how it would be, you know, like I said, half concert, really capturing what goes on in Vicar Street at those gigs, really capturing the energy in the room, and then also digging into some of the fan stories, and also digging into Damo's own story and what he's been through, you know. So he sat there very silently, didn't say a whole lot, you know, and he's kind of quite an intimidating man when you meet him first, to big unit, and he didn't really say a whole lot. All he didn't know if he absolutely hated the idea or if he liked it or what. He didn't give much away, but at the end of it, he said in true Damo form, "That's fucking deadly." And so from that point on, I knew I was onto something. And he basically said, "Look, whatever you do, Ross, try and make a film that helps people." You know, so that was kind of rule number one from the get-go, was, can this film be something that, you know, much like the gigs and how the gigs help people, can the film do the same thing? You know, if people go and see the film, they can see something in it that relates to their own situation, you know.
Yep.
So that was it.
So I suppose pitching an idea to someone about making a documentary with them, but that doesn't focus on them, it's unusual. But you say that Damien was open to that from the start.
Oh, got the whole idea. To be honest, like at first, part of me didn't even, you know, it feels weird because Damo's part in the film is so important now, but I feel like Damo's music is like everything in the lyrics almost tells his story, you know. So I at first I wanted to approach it with literally Damo's on stage, and the rest of the film is the fans. But then as we got into it, we were like, you know what, actually, we need more Damo in this film, you know. But no, he was very open to it, and it was actually great working with him because he just let me do, you know, what I wanted. He didn't really, when it came to showing him the film, when we had the kind of rough cut done, he only had two changes, and his changes were to I had a shot of one of his brothers in. I had to get a shot of the other brother in, or the other brother would kill him, you know. So it was changes like that he was making, nothing too, you know, big. So he really gave me the creative freedom to do it, and it was, you know, it was a great experience, because a lot of artists would have the ego that, you know, hang on a sec, there's not enough for me in this, you know. So but Damo, you know, believed in what we were doing, which was capturing. It's more than him, you know. It's what he does. It's the whole energy and the vibe he's creating, and it's a bigger conversation. So he was very open to that, which was brilliant.
Yeah, I think you really, like you mentioned, that it's almost a spiritual experience, and I think you captured that really well in the film. Um, the three characters, Jonathan and Paki and Nadia, they share a lot of their personal stories. First of all, how did you find them? And then how did you gain their trust to the point where they would share very intimate parts of their life with you?
Yeah. Well, trust is a huge part of any I think making a documentary, and firstly, in terms of finding them, Damo knows his fans better than anyone. So the first person I asked was, Damo, do you know anyone who'd, be a good candidate to take part in this film, And really, like, what we were looking for was someone. We didn't want all of I call them characters, but they're not characters, they're real people. But for the sake of this conversation, we wanted three characters who were at different stages in their journey, I suppose, So we wanted someone who was kind of looking forward, someone who's kind of looking back, and then someone who's very much in the kind of present. So if you think about it, Packy's kind of looking forward, wondering what the future holds for him. Jonathan's kind of looking back, reflecting on what was in his past. And Nadia is very much in the present, going through it as we're filming her, So so that was kind of what I was looking for. And so Damo put me in touch with Jonathan, and he also put me in touch with Packy, and I went and met the two of them and explained to them what the film was about. And myself and Jonathan went swimming, I don't know how many times before we turned the camera on, like I met Jonathan a good few times. Same with Packy. I'd go out to him, we'd have coffee, go for a stroll, and very much it was very important to me that they're the real heroes of the film, the three of them. And for me, it was very important that they, Damo's music is very deep, and it was very important that we went deep with our characters. So yeah, I did a lot of work in explaining to them exactly what they were getting into, so they knew we wanted to really go into it and not hold back, and be open. And much like what Damo said about making a film that helps people, certainly for Jonathan, Nadia and Packy, their motivation for getting involved was, could someone else, potentially going through a similar situation to them, see something in their story that would help them unpack what was going on in their lives. So Nadia, then we got in touch with Ashley House, which is the rehabilitation center, and I went in and met them, and it was kind of like we filmed it all in December, so we're not filming people over a long period of time. It's very much, a snapshot of people in this particular moment in their lives. So I was wondering, was there anyone in there who was potentially leaving around December who was a fan of Damo, and they put me in touch with Nadia, and I had a chat with Nadia, and again, many conversations with Nadia explaining to her what we were doing. And she was very keen to get involved. She's, as she says in the film, like her whole life was kind of brushing her story under the carpet and not telling anyone, and being ashamed and all that kind of stuff. So she really wanted to put her story out there and not be ashamed of it, and let people know who she was. And yeah, thankfully she wanted to get involved as well. And so yeah, that's how the three of them got on board.
And for yourself, the kind of visual style for the film, how did you arrive at that? It's quite distinctive in its look.
Well, like the black and white thing, I always kind of the black and white. I guess like the film is quite meditative as well, like it's we're talking about mindfulness, a lot of it through the film. It's relatively subtle, but Packy finds mindfulness in the boxing, Jonathan in the swimming, Nadia with her family, and Damo with music. So they're the music, the nature, and the gratitude are the three things that Damo mentions that kind of are the ways to deal with trauma. And what was my point? Yeah, so it's meditative. So the black and white, when something's in black and white, you're not thinking about, oh, what color are the curtains there, or he's wearing a pink shirt, or you're actually listening to their story a bit more, and there's a lot of the editing is not super cutty. we leave the shots for a lot longer sometimes than you'd be normally comfortable with, and that's very much on purpose. We wanted to, when people are speaking, to not have too much distraction, so you really hear what they're saying, and you're with them, and you're listening to their story. And I think having it in black and white was the right choice creatively for it. They say when you put a film in black and white, you lose 20% of your audience. So our distributors weren't too happy about it, but I think I think it was the right choice, to have it in black and white. And that kind of feeling of just sitting with the footage for a little bit longer than would normally be comfortable was very much on purpose and part of the aesthetic of the film,
And were there any challenging? What was the most challenging part for you of making the film?
Getting it funded. COVID. There were loads of challenges. It's the first feature film I've made, so trying to get the funding was tricky, and some good people, Screen Ireland, got involved, which was brilliant. And then we got some investment, and I put some of my own investment, obviously time and stuff into it, and our own resources in Motherland. But that was a tricky part. Like, the actual making of it was a joy. It was just great to be at the gigs. It was great to be filming with Damo. It was great to be filming with Jonathan, Nadia, and Packy.
Were there any memorable stories that spring to mind when you think about the shoot and the edit?
Memorable stories. There are a good few, yeah. I just like the most memorable thing, I think, was when we actually premiered it. We premiered it at Galway Film Festival, which was this time last year, July 2021. And COVID was still around, and we had an outdoor screening in Galway, and it was an outdoor screening with 200 people, and everyone had their headphones on, and it was just such a joyous night. At the end, everyone's standing up, standing ovation. All the cast, Jonathan, Packy, Nadia were all there. Damo was there. My family were there. All my friends were there. It was just such a beautiful night, and it was like kind of you think when you're in the edit that you're making something that's good or whatever, but until you show it to a lot of people, you don't really know, So that was just a wonderful night to have, because we never thought we'd get it. We honestly never thought that it would ever make it to the cinema at one point. So it was such a relief to finally have it on the big screen and have it out there and for people to see it. So that was the big highlight.
Great. Slán agus Bannock. Thanks a million, Ross.
Thanks a lot.